I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation. Madam President, we thank Ms. De Carlo for her briefing. Russia is against any military activity that threatens the security of the Korean Peninsula and the countries of Northeast Asia. We regret the recent events in the region. We are convinced that finding mutually acceptable political and diplomatic solutions is the only way to resolve the issues on the Korean Peninsula peacefully and to establish in Northeast Asia a stable security mechanism. This should be our main objective, and resolving this would allow us to normalize the situation in the region. We note with regret that over the last 4 years, the Council has not been able to find within itself the strength to respond to the dismantling by the North Koreans of their nuclear testing ground and the fact that Pyeongchang has complied with the moratorium on nuclear tests and launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles. In each of its resolutions on DPRK from 2006 onwards, the Council has expressed its willingness to review the limitations depending on how far Pyeongchang has gone in complying with the provisions of the relevant documents. Unfortunately, thus far, the Security Council has only strengthened restrictions, ignoring the positive signals from North Korea. Therefore, this development today is in many ways the consequence of the lack of far-sightedness of some colleagues present today, who have not been able to go beyond thinking in a sanctions-based paradigm, which for many years has not been able to guarantee security in the region. We haven't seen any other viable initiatives from them. We believe that the further strengthening of sanctions against DPRK would go beyond the framework of cutting off financing for the missile and nuclear programs and would threaten North Korean citizens with unacceptable socioeconomic and humanitarian problems. We want to recall to our American colleagues that negotiations are a two-way street. There is no point expecting that Pyeongchang would carry out an unconditional disarmament under the threat of turning the sanctions screw or guarantees that are not backed by any promises. However, the creation of new military blocs in the region, such as the association of the United States, United Kingdom and Australia, cause serious doubts about the good intentions of these countries, including from the point of view of Pyeongchang, and they don't help to establish dialogue. We have repeatedly said that there is a need to form spaces of unified and indivisible security without fully considering the legal concerns of all of the states in the region in security terms. We won't be able to achieve lasting results. The institutes and mechanisms of the United Nations and its Security Council should be utilized to support processes of settlement and intra-Korean dialogue and shouldn't be an obstacle to them. Only then would we be able to talk about effectively resolving the problems that have accumulated in the region, including the nuclear issue, on the basis of dialogue and mutually acceptable agreements. Sanctions and pressure will barely or hardly help to achieve this. There's also further rejection caused by the so-called autonomous secondary sanctions against DPRK and other states that have been introduced by Washington and its allies, going above and beyond the Security Council sanctions. Unilateral restrictions not only disdain the sovereignty and legal interests of member states and contradict the norms and rules of international trade, but also undermine the integrity of the limitations that are agreed within the Security Council. It is unacceptable to attempt to enshrine these restrictions by using the Security Council's authority or that of its 1718 Sanctions Committee. In this connection, we call on everyone to exercise restraint and in practice to confirm their readiness to renew dialogue in line with the agreements that have already been achieved and commitments entered into. The Russian-Chinese project on a political and humanitarian Security Council resolution is still on the table. This would help to stimulate the parties to enter into negotiations. We'd wish to note that the lack of progress on the political track, part of which could be served by the resolution I've just mentioned would threaten then the further growth of tension on the peninsula, which unfortunately is what we've seen in recent months. Thank you very much.
أشكر ممثلة الاتحاد الروسي على بيانها.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I give the floor